Okay, so we're going to have a little look at routing today. Now, let's go with the delta. Now, the first thing I'd look at doing is, personally, I tend to bump up the hills pretty high, just because it gives you something to look at. Trees, plants, grass, rocks, you can kind of leave where you want. I mean, I would tend to tone down these ones, but probably leave trees, just because the undergrowth stuff on this, when it does for default, tends to be a little bit rubbish. You'll have seen this before. The first thing to do is just get rid of all of this. You just don't want any of it. And we'll hit apply, and we're left with this little plot. So straight away we'll get kind of this autosave thing. And here we go. Now, one of the first lessons that I learned really early on, and this was kind of, we're talking second course stuff, was you want to set your lighting really, really early. Now let's say we've got a really nice delta. I mean, part of the reason we're going to do that is so that we can use the ocean a little bit. So we can go to the ocean plot. And all of this stuff you'll have seen before. So we're just going to really quickly and clumsily get rid of a bit of coastline. This brush is great for it. Kind of the nice little wavy edges. And we're just going to go around and spam click a little bit. You can, I'd say, do it at around about 10 feet or so, just because you want a relatively gradual dip into the ocean. If you start doing it much more than that, you lose a lot of the, you basically get these really sheer drops that the game just unfortunately doesn't render very well. And we're going to get rid of the bits right the way around the edge here as well. Haven't done a delta in a long time. Love the look. So yeah, we're going to do this as if it's kind of like a little coastal plot, as you normally would expect it to be. I.e., we're not going to use the whole 4 sides of the island. We're going to limit the amount of coast we've got to this, and then everything else is going to be relatively inland. Now you might want to occasionally check your measure tools, because so we're going 20 feet up. There's some dips. Some of the other things you might want to do, take the really soft fuzzy brushes, and that'll be the controller coming out. And we might want to just randomly raise land. Now, any of you who've seen the kind of Mayday plot generation video, you'll kind of have an idea of what this is doing. It's basically just going at a random height and just spinning it around, letting the brush slowly apply. It's going to create some little gentle undulations for you. And the other thing we could do then is, if we want everything to come towards the water, we can take, and this is a really nice trick that you'd have seen on the last video, on the fairways one. If you take this brush where the epicenter is quite hard, and we're just going to raise it up, you'll see you're creating this kind of little slope. So if we took it all the way up, you'll see that essentially what we're doing is just creating that slope. That's as high as it could go. We're obviously not going to go to there. But we probably do want this side to be a little bit higher than the other side. So I might just try. I've not done this before. Let's just see how that works. And kind of just generally end up with some higher terrain over there to over here. Now, you'll see at the start we kept all of the trees in, and I think that's usually pretty nice to do. However, we can always get rid of them and bring them back in. So if we want to go to terrain settings, take trees all the way down, and we can see the land we're working with. And you can kind of change those on the fly, and it's always, what is quite nice about this is it's always the same auto-gen trees. Now, looking at this, it looks a little bit hilly actually. So we'll take some of that out, make it a little bit flatter. Because I think near the coast we probably don't want that many. And then maybe we'll pop the trees back in. Now, as mentioned before, I kind of want to set, when I design, I try to set lighting as pretty much kind of thing number 1. Good morning, Jay, or afternoon even. So I'll try to work out pretty early on where the light's going to be coming from, because that way you can, whilst you don't want to design totally around it, you want to have an idea of which holes are going into the light, where your really good looks are, the holes where you can just kind of abuse lighting a little bit. So as it's coastal, why don't we just go with lighting coming this way. So now with that in mind, I might be wanting to play the majority of holes up the coastline going this way. But one of the things I'm going to try to do today and look at is kind of how we might be able to use the coast a little bit more creatively than maybe normally we would do. Might try and chuck in a couple of little bays as well, actually. That might be quite nice. Yeah, I thought I'd do a tutorial video because it's been a little while since I've done one, and this is one that I feel I'm actually relatively decent at. So there we go, we've got this nice little bay now as well, and that should work pretty nicely. So in terms of routing, you want to have an idea of which, now we'll set our lighting to that direction, and for me I like going either at kind of like the 8-9 o'clock range, or kind of like the 3:34, that late afternoon sun's lovely. You want to take your inclination down a fair bit. I find around the 30-degree mark at this sort is usually pretty good. It can be quite low, but you get these lovely dramatic looks, particularly if you've got water coming into play as well. And we'll try to line it up with that little line we'd set. Don't worry about the clouds for the moment, we'll take care of those. So weather, we're going to dump that cloudiness just all the way down to 0 for the moment. You can play with clouds later, but it tends to work just to have an idea of what's going on. So one of the things that you might be tempted to do is just go, right, and believe me, I've done this on a course. You go, well, we're going to have par 5 there, par 3 there, and then we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come back in. And you'll see you've used up all of that really good coastline on just maybe 3 holes. You will get really good looks on those few holes. I mean, that hole already you can tell will be a stunner. That one as well. That one slightly less so, it's playing a bit more away from the sun. But we're going to look at what we can do a little bit differently. And this idea has always been kind of based on, if you've seen the real life Creative Indeed. Now, that's not to say we're not going to abuse that for at least one hole. We definitely will, and I think this one's probably the best one we've got. So that little across bay hole. So what I might do is I might mark out a site where I think a green could go. Now, if you've seen Band and Jeans have just been putting together the Sheep Ranch, which is by Core and Crenshaw, I think that might be a little bit too long. They've had a huge amount of coastline to work with, kind of cliff edge sort of stuff, and they've posted a routing up there, and a lot of it is really creative, and their brief was basically to use the coastline as much as possible and in as many ways as possible. So they've done things like along the coastline, towards the coastline, playing away from the coastline from tees. One of the things they talked about, which was really interesting, was let's say you played to a green here. Well, how do you kind of maximize the space that you've got available? And it might be having one tee in ground for 2 holes, so here, but having one tee going off in this way and one tee going off in this way. And they talked about this kind of slice of pizza sort of effect, where in actual fact what you're doing is you're really maximizing the space, but there's no danger of getting kind of caught between the same 2 holes. And that's something I definitely would like to take a little bit of inspiration from with this, even though this course will likely go nowhere. Oh, my computer's been doing this recently. It won't let me clear out measure tools in the way that it should do. So if we've decided that this is going to be kind of a stellar hole location, which I think we have, now what we can do though is we can bring that green back, because we thought that was going to be a bit far. And what I quite like doing is setting up these sight lines where you see another hole in the background. So I might look at putting a green here, and yet you play to that from a different angle. Now often the easiest way to do this is just do a par 3. So where you've got, say, a 4, and you can kind of see the whole building itself out already. You've got a par 4, And then on this approach shot, it really helps with planting as well. You're going to see that par 3 in the background coming out, and you might even have a tee back here as well for another green, another fairway that goes off somewhere else. And it's a little bit more creative than just playing along the coastline. But that's one thing we could do. It's not going to be the only thing. We could also have a green up here and kind of make a lot of little, I don't know, epicenter moments where you've got this area on the routing is going to be really cool. We know you've got great lighting behind it. So firstly, we're going to max out on that shot and have it look really pretty and have loads of stuff in there. You can't visualize all of it yet, but the more you practice with this, you get a better idea of where different holes are going to be. Now I might also have, if this is a little valley, we could have a green up here on this hill, perhaps. And then you're going to see, you're going to come round this corner. So off that tee, you're just transfixed by all of these different holes coming together. Corner cliff tee as well could be doable. And I think one of my major philosophies of routing that I've come up with over the last 3 or 4 designs I've done is have these little kind of pinch points in the routing where everything comes together and you're playing at the same area from different angles, but do it so that they're in different points in the round. So this might be, say, hole 6, this might be hole 2, that could be, I don't know, maybe it is 7, say, or maybe it's coming up the coast this way and it's 9 or something, and this could be 16. And that way you're ending up in the same sort of area at different points and coming back, and when you're on this approach, let's say this is the first one you get to, you're looking and going, oh, that green looks stunning, well, that's cool, and you spot it out the other corner of your eye. But then when you're coming back this way and it opens up over and you're just like, oh, we're there. And it kind of anchors you in your round a little bit more, I think, and it really adds to your overall feel of the whole plot. Whereas if you just do hole here, hole here, hole here, hole here, you're going to end up with something that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So at this point, I'm just going to say, am I going to save? Probably not. But let's say one of the things I see newer designers do a lot, and I did this on my first design, would be hole 1 goes there. And the maxim is that you should walk forward to hole 2. So hole 2, say it's par 3 and it goes there. And hole 3, let's say we're working our way out to the ocean, hole 3 goes there. Hole 4 here. And then we're going to get to our coastline and what have you. Now, first of all, it's pretty boring in terms of how you've done it. But secondly, look at the amount of space you have just generated that you are going to have to plant. So even these are quite close together, but you're going to get the second tee shot coming through here. But not only that, because of the angle you've got, you've also ensured that you're going to have to plant this bit heavily, which if you're looking off this sideline, you're not going to. This one going onto this one's not too bad, actually. It kind of builds it out. But let's say your next hole had gone up here, which I've seen people do. I think you really have to think through routing a lot more than people tend to. We're just going to get rid of those holes. They're purely to illustrate a point. Whereas, let's pop some down here. So we have this sort of lovely coastal par 5, which is something that I draw on a lot. And then let's say we'll have, maybe we'll have a little par 3 down to here. And then we'll have this kind of C tee shot going over here, and that could be a really nice short 4. Maybe we end up now going away from the coast a bit, going up to here, but we then come back down with a shortish 4 here. And then this teeing ground, well, we've already used it once, so actually we can be really tight with this bit of the routing here. Let's go up here, maybe. 491. Maybe we'd play a par 3. And again, I'm thinking like, well, you might be walking forward and off the tee there, but let's put a little short par 3 green in there. Now we're going back this way. I'm doing all of this randomly, I'm not really thinking it through. Let's maybe have a par 5 down to here. And we're going to go over to here. Now you might be spotting that there's an issue with the routing that we've done, and that's fine. Green congregation is massively underrepresented, I agree. But let's say we now start looking at this little area, and if we just clear out some of these trees, just to give you an idea of what we've done. So on this sightline, purely by thinking about how things are going to work, and dip into the camera mode, you're going to see this green, you're going to see this green, you're going to see this one up here, and you've now got one down here as well. Or rather, that was a T, I think, haven't we? I know we've got a little green down there as well. And which means when you're putting on this green, you will eventually be able to look over and see that green. And you will be able to look up and see that green, because we'll maximise this now that we know that we've got this area here, and it's going to be really cool. You can have that little par 3 in the background that's maybe just a little bit higher or lower. You could have this green looking down onto that one from that sort of an angle. Could be really cool. You're also, because we'll eventually clear out loads of these trees, there's no way you're playing to a par 3 on the coast with this many trees there. But you're also going to be looking over this tee shot. That's a lovely little hole, potentially. And then later on in the round, we've kind of worked our way up to here. Or you might be driving down to here and then hitting a little lofted wedge, and as the wedge is in the air, you're seeing that hole behind it. And then we head up here, go all the way through. Got that little par 3 there, which, yeah, you know what, that one hasn't worked as well as we'd have liked, because you're looking over that way, so maybe we'll change that. And we then have, I believe we had a par 5 coming down this way. It was a long one. But again, we can open up that and you can see that tee shot again, which you've already played. Come around here. And as you come around onto this one, you maybe get your final reminder of this little area, seeing that green up there as well. Now, what are the problems with this? Well, if you remember, we set our lighting right at the start, and we know we're going to have some holes dead into the lighting. And you might remember I've left this line going all the way across here. Now that's partly to help us with which holes look good, but also which ones are not going to look so good. Now in actual fact, this routing's worked pretty well, because if we're going for this one, well, that's going to be really good lighting. Not perfect, but on the approach shot, it's going to be pretty close to. We can still tweak this. Lighting coming off the side is always pretty good. You basically just want to avoid the ones that are going dead down this way, because those are going to struggle. 3 will look outstanding. So 4 is going kind of down lighting, which, you know what, you look at it and it's not a disaster. When it starts becoming difficult is when you have bunkers going in, because for whatever reason bunkers just get washed out with the lighting and you can't really see it. It's the same with the contours. I mean, if you look at the green from there, it's kind of washed out. If we spin it round, those contours are really suddenly popping. I know they're random and auto-gen, but you can see the definition, the little shadows really make a difference. 5 is going to look good. Even the approach shot is going to look good. 6, I think, is going to be a struggle, particularly that approach shot. That approach shot has now become dead down lighting. And so one of the things I might tend to do with, well, we'll talk about it in a second. 7, cross lighting, fine. 8, kind of down lighting, but then it turns round into, so the approach shot's going to look a lot better than the tee shot. And then finally 9 is going to look pretty good as well. And actually, I don't mind this routing. I think the one thing that I'm feeling at the moment is, okay, obviously we've got to get out here somewhere. We've got to think about where our clubhouse is going. I would imagine, let's put a clubhouse down and see how we can work towards it. It's also worth mentioning at this point that almost all of my routings that I do are on paper. It's very rare that I find stuff in the game. I can do it, I just prefer really planning it out beforehand. So let's say we've got this clubhouse area, and we'll clear some stuff around it as well. And that's kind of where we're going to try to get back to. In terms of rules, a lot of people try to get 9 and 18 back to the clubhouse. It's not a must. You can do. It's nice if you can, because again, it's a central point that you can really draw attention to, particularly if you've kind of worked hard on the little details around them. You want to highlight that. And it can be another anchor point in the round, but this one relies less on natural features. So we can have one anchor point over here, if you want to term it that way, one over here, and then maybe we'll create another one somewhere down here. Now the one thing I am finding here with this bit of the routing is that we've kind of used up a lot of the coastline pretty early on. So you'll also notice that in terms of where I've put the clubhouse, I'm going to be hard pressed to have one with good lighting. So I might be thinking, well, do we want to move the clubhouse this way? And also, where are 1 and 18 going to be? Because you want to make a real impact with your first hole and also with your 18th, and ideally with your 9th as well. But we can't have all three of them going this way. In fact, I don't think we can have any of them going this way. So it's then, do we want to keep the lighting? Do we want to twist it around a little bit? That's stuff you can kind of play with later on. In all honesty, trying to set your lighting for the perfect angle right at the beginning is not worth doing, because 2 or 3 degrees, 5 degrees, 10 degrees worth of distance won't massively affect a hole. You'll kind of see if I pulled the T like to here, the lighting's not really going to be any better or worse. It might be like your look might be better because you bring more of the ocean in, but the actual way it casts on bunkers, minimal difference. So at this stage, the thing that's really worrying me is with this routing is how am I going to be able to work it so that 18 is going to be good and coming kind of this direction. And what we could do is we could have this being 18 and coming up here. And it's not brilliant lighting, but it's okay. Of course, you don't have to do this. You don't have to have 18 with good lighting. I just think it kind of works quite nicely. So at the moment it's 8 that's causing us problems. So at this stage what I might look at doing is going, well, can we move 8 to kind of create, what if we could have basically a hole going this direction being our 18th? And what do we need to do in order to facilitate that? And you don't really get those sorts of ideas until you've done half of the routing and you can now move things around. And one of the things that many people won't have seen is this move hole feature, which is fantastic when you're doing routing. So even once I've done my drawings on paper and kind of bring them into the designer, you get stuff looking like this, and you've got a rough idea of, well, for our front 9, as we've put it, we've got 3 par 5s, 2 par 4s, 4 par 3s. Well, I imagine one of those par 5s is just mislabeled. So this would be a par 5. Yeah, 509, that would be a long 4, so I might change that par quickly. But one of the best features the game gives you that drawing on paper just can't. Drawing on paper can give you a great idea of where everything's roughly going, and you can draw out lighting and you can tweak stuff with pencil and rubber and what have you. But what we can't do is this, and go, well, hit them. So if you go into hole settings and then move hole, and you start tweaking it around, and you can go, well, actually, you know what, I kind of want to create this more space, and the lighting's going to look better. So why don't we just go dead parallel with 5? Now, I don't normally love going dead parallel. I feel it's a little bit boring parkland course. I prefer kind of going in little triangles with my routing, but in this case it might work because it might free us up that little space or that kind of tiny alleyway. Now that is going to leave 7, though. If we have that knock-on effect, 7 either has to go back in the same direction or it's down lighting. For me, because it's such a set piece hole and you can't really generate that much interest other than the shot, I try not to have my par 3s going dead down lighting. I find it really hard to make them look good, and in fact on one of my recent contest courses that was probably the hole I struggled with the most. So maybe we'll go out this way instead. Now we are kind of creating a bit of space in here, but the question is always going to be how are we getting back there. So what I do think though we could do is rather than having this 9 and this 8 here, we're going to move 8 miles away. So why doesn't 8 go out this way? And then maybe we're going to hit the coastline again from a slightly different angle at a different point in the round. One option. And then we're going to get to 9 at some point, and this is actually going to be, I think, 9 will be 16. We'll then have a 17th that is going to just eat up the bad lighting because you have to on some holes. And personal preference, I tend to make those par 5s or long par 4s. Like, you might as well just get the maximum out of going the wrong way away from the sun. Sounds really silly when you put it like that, but it does work quite nicely. And then our 18th is in a perfect position. The question then is, once again, how do we get back to 9, and where's 1 going to be? So we're still working on all of these. And at this point, well, how are we possibly going to have 1 in good lighting, given we've put 18 right there? Tricky. One thing that's also worth addressing, and this is something I didn't learn until, I think, probably my 18th hole on Marlette's, which is a really nice hole. But you don't realise until you do it that actually going dead into the lighting is not good. You really want to be about 10-15 degrees off. So if it's coming slightly from the side, so this look, it's actually going to be a little bit dazzling and blinding. We're not going to see as much of it as we'd want. So what we're going to do is we'll just ping it around this way a little, and life is going to get a lot easier for that approach. Now then the question is, well, how's that going to affect all the other ones we've looked at? Well, our 18th that we've now worked so hard to create is now more sidewards than it is into. We don't want it dead into, so maybe if we go the other way. Yeah, again, that's still too dazzling. I preferred where it was. -7 or so, maybe. And it's worth tweaking with all of this stuff right at the beginning, and then just forgetting about it. Make your decision on lighting, commit to it, and then you're done. Because we can always move this T angle so that you're looking that way. Potentially. It's entirely up to you. Now 3. Is 3 going to look as good as it did? Yeah, actually 3 I think looks better because you're not dead into that sun. Now one of the things I was already thinking earlier that I was talking about was I want to use the coastline in multiple ways at multiple points in the round. Now, have we really maximised that? I don't think we have. So let's have this 4th tee coming up here somewhere instead. As you can tell, even by doing this, by working it round, we're getting a better angle for the lighting anyway, which is not the most important thing in the world, but it will make your life significantly easier. Hi, Mike. We're just doing a little bit of talking about routing and lighting and all that jazz. So we've got so far 1 green, 2 greens, 3 greens on the ocean. We're going to have a 4th down here, and we'll probably try to work a 5th somewhere here as well. So let's say if we came round here, and that can be our 8th before we hit 9. And if we have that going from this sort of direction, then I feel like we've really started to maximise the ocean views. We can also lift up this bit so that it's all kind of overlooking everything else. Now, at this point I might start looking at, well, what are we looking like for pars? Well, we've got 2 par 3s, 5 par 4s, and 2 par 5s. So at some point we're going to want to work in probably at least another par 3 and another par 5, ideally more. Personal preference, but I tend to like avoiding par 72 courses just because, I don't know, it's not really my favourite thing. It feels just a little bit too standard. Hiya, Bill. Yeah, no worries. Thank you for coming along. Now at this point we might look down here and go, there's another really good green site we could use. You're going to be right on this kind of cliff edge, but 273 is an awkward little distance for a hole. It's not quite a short par 4. It's too much for a par 3. And we could always extend out, or we could go down here. That might be even better. It's kind of turning us a little bit more into the lighting. And then how much space do we have here? Actually, we've got a good amount. So we can have 2 short 4s in a row, which may not be what we wanted to do originally. Or we can just bring the coastline in around this side, which is probably going to be better. And then we've really maximised all of it. I think that's going to be what we do. Because all of this was originally born out of the fact that we've got this bit of coastline, little spit right here, and we're just going to use it as much as we can. But what I didn't want to do was turn this whole thing into an island. This is going to be relatively realistic in the sense that you've got a little bit of coast to work with. You've been given this kind of section of property, and that's how you're going to use it. And actually what we're now going to do is go, well, we could use a little bit more space for this hole, couldn't we? So why don't we drop 8 back a bit? Turn it round as well, gives us a little bit more space, and it's going to make that second shot really sing. And then here we go, we're going to have this one short par 4 going this way. 328, potentially drivable. We're going to have a little tee right on the coast. We're going to have a par 5 going up here. Okay, and at this point we've got 6 par 4s, 3 par 5s. Okay, and we've got 6 holes left to fit in. Well, we know one is going to end up here. I've already decided one of them is going to be a par 3, kind of going here. Or maybe that's another short 4. I'm kind of loving designing short 4s at the moment. Let's do that. Maybe that's a little bit too long, I don't know. I also know that I need to reach this bit of coast some way. So, oh, that's going to be a long par 5, I think, if we do that. Struggling with this cough. And again, we can tweak that and come further. Why don't we do this? Let's just go all out, exploit the coastline with this. I'm going to come round so that you're going to see bits of that hole that's tentatively labelled hole 1 for the moment. So on this approach, you're going to see that view again, and we're just going to really exploit this. So at this point, what have we left ourselves? Well, you might remember we've got the clubhouse over here, and we've got to come dead this direction, which you've seen our lighting is not going to be pretty. We've got 2 ways of doing it, really. We can go, and we've also got 18 coming up here, and we'd said one of them was coming this way, so let's pop these 2 holes in. This one was going to be our 17th. And this one was going to be our 18th. What did we not know, Mike? The move hole thing. The move hole thing's brilliant. When you're doing this sort of stuff, it's absolutely vital. Okay, so we've made it back to 18, so we've now just... What have we left ourselves? Well, we've ended up here, and we've ended up here. So we've put ourselves in a bit of a pickle because we don't have enough holes for what we want to do. I don't think. Unless I really start stretching it out. Let's have a little look. So let's say we put a par 5 here. That's 16. We've now got 2 holes to get from there back to here. And I'm not sure that's going to work, so we might need to go a little bit tighter with some of this. That's alright. At this point, let's try to work out our routing as is, and then we can tweak from there. So we're going to reorder holes. So if you go into here, this is going to be our hole 1. 2 is going to hit the ocean. Then we've got 3 and 4, which we were pretty happy with, although I actually think I'm going to move hole 4 a little bit. I think it will look a little bit better if we go down this way a touch. Yeah, we'll work it out. 5 went this way. 6 up here, 7, 8, 9, yep, 10, this was all fine. We're then going to put this as going to be 11. And then we've got this one is 12. Which means that we're currently going 12, and trying to get back around to here. Yeah, you might see we've got a little bit of a problem. Okay, and part of this has come because we were trying to reuse as much of the coastline as possible. So now I kind of want to go, well, I've created lots of lovely little moments. What bits are the ones that can go? What bits are the ones that can stay? And indeed, can we tweak the routing a little bit so that we're not going quite as haywire around here as we are? An obvious one that can go is this little par 3, because it's just a transition hole at the moment, and we can move this T just over behind that green anyway. We can have a relatively straight long hole. It's directly into the sun, which we talked about a minute ago. It's not being ideal, so maybe we'll bring the T up here, and that's going to create a bit more space for us to get back anyway as well. So that's all well and good. We now end up on 11, and you can see the problem we're going to leave ourselves with. We've got not many holes, which means we're going to have to go this way as quickly as we can, and they're all going to be down lighting. So again, less than ideal. How can we work this out? We've also got, as you might have noticed, we've got 1 as a par 5 and 2 as a par 5. Don't think I love that. Now we can always just tuck the second tee in here, make it more of a dog leg. That would be possible. We could also move our clubhouse. So at this point, I'm starting to kind of look around the plot and work out, well, where do we need the majority of the holes to generally go? Where can we squeeze? Now again, I might still go to this move hole and just bring everything down this way a little bit more and kind of shuffle these two this way. You might want to look and do kind of little measure tools. Well, tee boxes, the game gives you a lot of room, but you don't need 30 yards around a tee. And 100 yards between tee and green is fine. In all honesty, you don't need even this much space. We can move the green up to here. May I ask why you don't like holes straight into the sun? I don't know whether it's people not liking on tour. I think the main reason is, for me, is that it's just quite a blinding approach. So let's say we go there. You'll often notice that actually if we go to this angle, it looks a lot better and you can see things a lot more cleanly and clearly. Dead into the sun, for some reason, is just really often blinding. A tutorial, yeah, a tutorial on routing, which is going interestingly. We've boxed ourselves into a corner a little bit, so we're going to try to work out how we might solve that. I've got an idea. Idea number 1 is going to be we move the clubhouse. And we're going to end up with our clubhouse over here somewhere. And let's have this kind of really tightly routed delta course. And we're going to delete that hole, because that one doesn't matter. Now, still causing us a problem with how we get away from the clubhouse, but we'll get to that. Still I've caused myself even more of a problem with hole 1 here. Let's delete that one. Now, in reality, the problem we've created for ourselves is just that we've got too many holes around here, which means that we're having to go really wide in order to just get around to this one that's number 1. Yeah, we could delete the course and start over, but I think we can make this work. You've just got to see quite how it goes. 13 to 12 is confusing me. What have I done with the numbering here? And because we've stretched out this coastline so much, which we've done nicely, we've led to holes that are going to have to go this way. And at the moment, we've got 13 down. So now I feel like we've got a bit more space to play with. So maybe we go with 1 just up here, which is just going to eat up some of them. that's not going to look great, and then it means that this the next hole is also not going to look great. So I'd rather not do that. Let's just heat up all the bad lighting with the par 5 somewhere up here. And now we might be able to kind of zigzag our way across a little bit more, which you can do. You can have one going this way and then one going this way. The problem is you're just kind of basically eating up average lighting if you do that. Now again, where are our 18s going? Where's 18 going? I think we can probably move this clubhouse. We can create a little bit of a clubhouse area in the middle there. Let's put it somewhere around about here, perhaps. And even though we're kind of getting lost in this a little bit, it's still good to be able to kind of talk through how you might do it and what you might see. Now here's another little cluster I think we can make a bit of. So we'd have that being maybe our 18th approach, and you've got this kind of, you can see there's a little bit of a hill coming down here. I'm kind of feeling like we could emphasize that a little bit more so that you see that 7th green again when you're coming back up 18. Let's say 18 goes somewhere around about here. I tend to usually set around 300 for where you think drive distance is going to be, and then you've got your approach. I mean, it varies, but 285 with a master driver, 15 carry. It's worth you bearing in mind that if you go full out firmness, it's going to go up to about 330. Possibly even more. And now we've eaten up that whole distance there. 17 could be a par 3, which that's not my favourite thing to do, but actually no, it can be a short 4 again. We've got a lot of them. So maybe that works for getting us back to the clubhouse. It's not my favourite routing I've ever done, at least this bit, but we can tweak it as we go. It's good to get something in place though. So 572 there, short 4 there, mid 4, kind of long 4 it seems, finishing hole. Which now means we've got two holes to get back out to here, which is doable. And then I've just got to reroute it and tidy everything up so that it all fits. Where do we want off first? I think it's probably better to do our second hole first. We know hole 1 is going to be pretty average lighting. Or we can start hole 1 here. You know what? We can sacrifice 13 a little bit more. In fact, it'll probably help it. So let's move that green round here. Frees up a little bit more space for us to go across this way. Why don't we start with a par 3? Never do that. Starting with a par 3 against the lighting. Maybe not. Or clubhouse is up here, overlooking all of this. Makes more sense for kind of getting in and out. 18th green down there, first tee up here. That's going to be easier. And we can eat up a lot of space with clubhouse stuff and what have you here. And hole 1 can actually come down here and will look alright. .313 is the most you've ever gotten on drive. There are some on my most recent one where I've had like 380 odd. Just depends how you get a kind of wind and bounce and what have you. Hello, Jamie. So let's say we start out with a stout par 4. Why not? Gets us to there. And as you can see, we've got one hole left and we've got to basically join it up to here. And it's going to be a par 3. It looks like it's going to be horribly downlighting. How are we looking for pars? We've got 1 par 3, 9 par 4s and 7 par 5s apparently. The game does not calculate this stuff well. Maybe we go just a short diddy par 3 over here. Yeah, pro clubs will do that for sure. Right. First things first, we're going to go through and tidy up some of these pars. So 16 is not a par 5. It's also going to be hole 18, and it's going to be a par 4 for the moment. This is hole 1, and that is a 4. And that's going to be hole 2. And so now what you've hopefully seen is we've got a relatively tight routing. If you look at the amount of the plot we have not used, and that's a really good thing because it means that we're not going to have to plant all of this. We've done a really tight routing. We've minimized the number of holes that are coming dead down lighting. There are a couple that I know I'm going to have to work really hard with. 16 is going to suffer. 15, no, need to sort that routing, is going to suffer. So these two are going to be really tricky to do. But we've got far more that are going to be on good lighting to great lighting. And that, I think, is something that the more you get comfortable with working around the designer, the better you get at. Right, let's go through this routing again. So we're going to have 1 down there, 2, 3 hit the ocean, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 made sense, 10. Just trying to work out which ones we've kind of put out of order first. And then we'll go through and talk about the other bits that come in with routing. Because the work is still nowhere near done. Ah, yeah. Because actually, we didn't need to get there, we need to get down to here. So this is currently hole 15 for no particular reason. What have you done here then? This is what happens when you do 2 halves of the routing. Trying to join it back up again is going to be tricky. 16, 17, 18. Okay, so these are now all in logical order, but you'll notice that we've not got 18 back to the clubhouse. Nor is it indeed the 18th hole that I wanted to use. So, how are we going to solve that? Well, first of all, 14 is going to go, because we didn't need that hole. We've got this one coming in here. Now I'm just going to go to move hole again and turn it around a little bit, and it comes through there. That leaves us one more hole that we can kind of get away with. Now I still quite like the idea actually of maybe 18 coming up through here. It's going to be crap lighting, but we can deal with that. So why don't we move this back to here? And let's say we're going to move 15 across around here. This routing is now getting really quirky, but that's something I quite like. Yeah, 12, 13 good lighting, 5 or 6 bad. I usually can minimize it more than that, but it does mean that you're going to have some holes that really suffer. So we're just going to do some tweaking of all of this, and then you'll see we've freed up this little channel for an 18th hole playing kind of away from the ocean back up to the clubhouse. Something like that. Now it doesn't take a genius to notice that we've got some problems with this. So at this point, let's clear out all our measure tools. So at this point we go through and we go, well, what do we like, what do we not like? That first hole is going to work. It's not going to be a stunner, but it's going to work. 2, same, it's going to be workmanlike. 3 is going to be really good. And it's going to open up onto this big kind of central area. I'm not sure how much I love 3 and 16 mirroring each other through here, because I think that's going to take away from the third hole where you open up on the bay. So in actual fact we'd want this green further down and this green further back. Now how does that work with everything else? Well, it could free up some space everywhere else. So we're going to move this one and just basically keep all of the same holes for the moment. I can even now turn 2 round a bit more, which will make life a lot easier. So maybe our second hole goes there, and 16 is just going to be looking something like this. Now again, we've created ourselves another problem there in that you see 15 green, 16 green. But if you remember, 15 green was kind of malleable in that we didn't. It's a transition hole, and you have to kind of realise which ones you do care about keeping, which ones you don't. That one was always getting crap lighting anyway. We know that there's a leap between 14 and 15 and 15 and 16. In all honesty, this is one where you look at this hole and you go, does this routing even work with this hole here? Because we're trying to get all the way across here to here in order to go back out again for one final little hurrah. Not sure. I'm not sold on it. We're also going to somehow have to cross 18 with 14 and 15. This would be one where, honestly, in a tutorial, this for me is a no-no. But you can get away with doing it once on a course, I think, if you do it well and if you know that it's there and you plan around it. So we've done 2 to there, and we've then got 16 to there and 3 is going around here. So 2 we can't move, in fact, because I've been an idiot and forgotten which one was which. Unless we move the first green round a bit more and then 2 goes here, why not? I mean, personally, par 3s are the hardest ones to do anything with lighting, so if I can kind of route a par 3 into good lighting, I will do, every time. Okay, so what have we got now? 1, 2, 3 round here. Not sold on this. This would need a lot of work. 4, 5 is lovely. 6 is getting really good lighting. So you've got this kind of coastal stretch that we've just maximised completely. And that was where we started this routing, if you remember. We kind of said, well, this is the prime land. How do we make the most of it? 7 is going to be okay. It's a transition hole to get us back up to the high ground so that, no worries, Bill, later. We can get back up to 8. 8 is going to overlook 5, and that'll be quite cool. We then go 9 back up to here, and you know what? Actually, 9's not miles away from the clubhouse. So we could make it go back if we really wanted to. All of this is screaming 14 has to move. And at this point, I've kind of got an idea of how I might do that. I think I'm going to take 1 and move it further away from the clubhouse, because I don't mind a little walk to the first tee. I think that's fine. You want to finish by a clubhouse for sure. We're then going to take 14 and we're going to move that around this side, and that's going to avoid this awkward little transition we've got with 18. And we're then going to take 15 and we're going to move that around here. And what that should mean is that I can then take 16, put it around this way a little bit more. Get 16 some better lighting. 3 can maybe go around to here as well. And now I'm liking that a lot more. Because this kind of no-no area is gone. How are we looking for pars at this point? Interesting. The game feels we have a lot of par 5s. We'll have a look at that. Now the ones that I've definitely made par 5s are 4. 1 was going to be a par 4, but I don't have a problem with a par 5 opening hole. It's quite a nice, easy way into your round. Mid par 3. Par 5 there, definitely. Par 5 there, definitely. Actually, this one could be a 4. 4 on the coast. Yeah, I think so. We've got another 4. Ten is definitely a 5. Although it doesn't necessarily need to be. We could make 10 a little bit shorter. We could also work 10 up to here so that you're teeing off from in front of the clubhouse. That would mean that we can tighten 12 in and 13. Let's do that. And a lot of people have seen me kind of extolling the virtues of tight routings, and this is why, because we're keeping everything super close together. We're going to see the same holes again and again and again. We're going to probably move that one out a little bit more. A lot of it comes from practice, and just being able to know what will work and how much space you've got where. So at the moment, that 7th green is going to be a little bit cramped, but I quite like the idea of having a challenge where I'm basically going to use only this sort of square footage for the whole course. We can then move that 11th in to be a little bit tighter, or a little bit longer actually. And that'll free up a little bit more space for 12 and 13. So why don't we have 12 coming round a little more? Or maybe the T just comes back to here. That probably makes a bit more sense. 13 was our eating up bad lighting hole. And even then, could we move it around here a little? It's going to make limited amounts of difference. I mean, the bad lighting, you can tell by the shadows, is here. But if we're going to there, it's still going to be pretty poor. I mean, we'd have to be going around to about here, and that's going to get us nowhere near where 14 is. So we'll probably leave 13 where it is for the moment. Equally, we know with this hole that we've got a lot of space left that we can use. So if we ever want to change, and right, and it's worth knowing these sorts of holes because of where you then start designing. Because you probably want to work from your most cramped area out. So 9 comes to this little valley, which I quite like. Then go up to 10, you've got clubhouse there. First tee over here, 15th tee here. Yeah, I'm quite happy with this at this point in time. What I'm not happy with is a par of 77, which feels like we don't want that. So we're going to work out where we want our par 5s, and have we got enough par 3s? I don't think we have. I think we're one short, aren't we? Two short, interesting. And one of the par 3s is hole 2, and one is hole 5. So we haven't got any really on the back. That's probably because I kept making them short par 4s. Maybe that's not an issue. Hello. I think 16 can be a par 3 easily. 16 can be a nice long 3. Like, still within sensible distance. Like, I don't massively care for par 3s over 220 odd yards. But it gives you, if it's downhill slightly, I don't mind it so much. Maybe we'll make it a little shorter. 223. 154 feet downhill. No, I think that does become a little bit gimmicky when you do that. I don't like it when the strategy is the elevation change. But that's a personal preference. Okay. Hole 1, par 5. Hole 2, par 3, 5, 4. So we've used up our quota of par 5s within 3 holes. I think this one's leaning towards having to be a par 4 opener. And we can always shorten it as and when we do it. We can move the tee around. It's just getting rough ideas of how far the holes are. Par 3, 4. We then had 4, 4, 4 to finish that front 9 off, which is okay. If we start looking at the lengths, 8 is short, 9 is uphill, I think, a little bit. 498. This one's 509, but we can extend that. We can make that shorter. We can do anything we want to those in terms of variety later. We start on a par 5, then a short 4, and then another 5, and then another 5. Okay, what have we done here? Now at the moment, I might start looking at our coastal holes and go, well, what have we got? We've got a long 4. We've got oh, that's quite long 3. I anticipated that one being a little bit shorter. We've got a short-ish 4, very short 4, and we've now got a par 5. I quite like having a par 5 on the ocean. So I think with this one we're going to have a little walk to this tee, and we're going to make this a kind of longish 4. And as you can see, just by kind of the trees coming back in as well, that's not going to be a hugely long walk through. Right, we can easily put a path in, that's fine. And we can do the same here as well. That's a 4, it's also quite a long 4. Probably shorten that a touch. Then we have 15, which is decided as a 5. 15 is definitely not going to be a 5. But do we like the green where it is? Kind of missing something in the 450-ish yardage. Let's pop it there for the moment. Now where are we at? Par 73, that's a bit better. 3 par 3s, 11 par 4s, 4 par 5s, 7,939 yards. Wowzers. That's not anticipated. So what that means is I've got far too many long par 4s. So let's drop this one back a bit. And in actual fact, I'd rather make more short 4s than long 4s. 5, 6, 2, that's fine. That one being such a long... See, this is an interesting one because we've got a really long space of land where actually, having said originally we're going to make the most of all this coastline, we've used 639 yards for one hole. I feel like we could have done that better. But it's going to be a bit of a signature hole. So at least we have that. I do wonder whether we could have done something more coming this way. Maybe if we take 17 and we turn it going the other way. Not really, this one's just a tutorial course. So 17 could go straight out. I mean, this is a key example, Mike, of a hole where I think dead into the light makes it really difficult. So why don't we go down this way instead? Not quite dead into, we can take that green and put it down there somewhere. Do we want to move this hole? Maybe, I don't know. For the moment, all I think is okay with this routing. I'm not in love with it. There are bits of it I like, but even then, there's bits on the coastline that I just feel like I could have done better. I really like 4, 5, 6. I really like 8 coming there. When we make that kind of hillside work a bit better, that'll be really good. I think 17 coming back to it late on in the round is going to be really cool. Just reminding you of this cool little area here that you haven't seen in a while. Now, 16 I feel isn't, at the moment, not really making a huge amount of all of this. And at this stage I'm also aware that I'm definitely reusing one trick over and over again, which is hole looking over the following hole. So if you look at waist 16 is going to be showing you 17. I've used that a ton already on this. So I wonder. Kind of feel like maybe in this case we could look out this way a little bit. Frees up a bit more space in here as well if we wanted to use that. If we wanted to swing 3 round so that it goes a bit more this way, could do. There's options anyway. And at the start you'd have seen that I took away all the fairway and I took away all the I think greens as well. Part of that is so that every time you start doing move hole, well, it leaves you these little clumps of trees and you get an idea of how much planting roughly you're going to have to do. I might widen these corridors. I don't know. This course, for what it is, I wanted this to be a lot shorter than this. Part of that is going to be the 4 par 5s, but I'd quite like this as a scoreable course with a lot more short 4s than there are long 4s. And with that in mind, I think we're going to start moving some of the greens back a little bit. So let's make that 424. That one is going to be phenomenally long. We don't want that. So I might just move the tees up a bit. 473. Yeah, still not loving this bit of the routing. I feel it's a really good spot that we haven't quite made the most of. This hole, when we bring the coastline properly in, will look good. So I'm okay with that being a 5. 492, again, it's a long hole. Although this one was mainly to eat up sunlight, wasn't it? Why don't we drop it down a little and take it over this way somewhere? Especially as it's uphill. 444. 486, another quite long one. I don't really want you to have too many long holes on this course. I'd quite like a few more under the 400 range as well. So that one's not far off. And it's a tiny bit downhill. Into the sun. No, into the sun is great, for sure. It's just, if you're going directly into it, it becomes tricky. When you're looking at it from this angle, way better. No, I'm totally on board with the fact that this lighting is horrible. You're not going to get much of a good hole. 13 is going to be an issue. 14 is not going to be particularly easy to build because it's just not going to look as nice. But no, like dead into the sun is just more difficult than people think. Because you feel like it should be really easy, and it should be perfect. And when you set up the routing, it will all be great, and it just isn't quite. I wonder whether we can move this hole a little bit. Just bring it a little bit more into that kind of sight line. That's going to be a bit better. Then it means that I can shorten this one a touch. Move 10 as well. So now, as you'll see, I'm kind of starting to these are now fine-tuning moments where we're looking at it and going, do we really want these holes at this sort of length, exactly this point, those sorts of things, and trying to get an idea of more of the flow. Let's move that waypoint up a little bit further. And I might now, at this point, I think I'll now start considering scoring stretches and like, where are you? What's your kind of flow of the round going? So we've got a solid opener, like not difficult, not really difficult, but like enough to make you think. We then got this second hole, which is going to be mid-length par 3. And we're just going to turn that around because I need lighting as a crutch on a par 3. Let's just pop it down here for the moment. This third hole, we've got a par 5. Still wondering about this hole. I don't know if I've put it in exactly the right position yet. Same with this one. But we will get there. I think 3 could actually move just a bit further over. And that'll make our lives a lot easier. Then you can have that little walk down, and we can probably move 4 a little bit as well. Yeah, a little bit. Wes is a big fan of his routing as well, so we'll give him a little guide through in a second. So now how are we doing with length and what have you? 7, 6, 30, par 73. Still a touch long for what I wanted it to be, but we can work with it, I think. There's not that many long holes, and we can always make holes shorter as we go. Yeah, I don't think... I actually think you can often make holes that are shorter play more difficult, just because you can tempt people into difficult... just kind of... You can put in more hazards as well. If you have a really heavily bunkered 520-yard par 4, that's not really going to be met with that much approval. But if you do the same on a 340-yard hole with water, I mean, that tends to work a little bit better. So one of the things we wanted to do originally at the start, I'm just going to recap because I'm pretty much done with this one, I think. We said we've got this kind of area of coastline here, but I was basically going to try to milk as much as possible, and we weren't going to turn the whole thing into an island where you just basically route all the way around the coast, because for me that's a little bit cheaty. At least in terms of what I wanted to do. I wanted to make, kind of came into this in my head with an idea of let's make a tightly routed, because that's what I do, kind of not a municipal would be the wrong word for it, but like a course that isn't that expansive, isn't that long, and there's parts of that where you'll have seen that I've failed in terms of the course is very long, but we are pretty tightly routed. We could definitely push it even tighter. You can see there's space to bring 1 further in, 2 further in, 3 further in, even 4 could go a little bit shorter as well. And the second thing we tried to do was talk about this idea of using clusters of holes. So this I think is a really cool little cluster here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 greens and 1, 2, 3, 4 tees within a really short. This wouldn't be a massively wide course, but it could be one with kind of sandy-ish waste areas, and in that case you've got quite a bit of width there. I don't know, I mean, in terms of placing holes apart, you're still a good 9 iron apart from the middle of each fairway. So if we were making the fairway at let's say we went fairways at around about 40 yards wide. Well, we're still leaving a good corridor for play. And I think that's something you kind of get used to the more you mess around with this sort of stuff and just moving holes in and around, is actually this is a lot, although it looks really tight, it's a lot wider than you think, and you will have width where you want it. And also the ocean is a really nice way of using width where you don't necessarily think it is, because we're going to have all that view, which means that this side can be quite tight, etc. So we use that little clump. The other thing we wanted to try to do was come back to the ocean at different points in the routing. That one I haven't managed quite so well. You get 17 back here, you get 11 and 12 back to the ocean after 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. I would have quite liked to have managed that somewhere around about 14, but I guess 12 is about as good as I could have done. What else could we have done? We could have gone 10 and 11 out here and then come back in, but actually we came all the way back around the other side of the plot. In terms of what do I like about this routing, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of where I've put the clubhouse in relation to the first tee, but it's not dreadful. 9 and 18 sort of come back to the clubhouse. 9 might need to have its tee bumped forward a little bit if I really want to do that. Or we'd swap the pars over between 9 and 18, make 9 a 5 and 18 a 4 and finish that one there. But you know what, I'm okay with it. If I wanted to put in a little path behind here and get you back to the clubhouse, we could do. What else I like about this is the fact that you get this lovely little reminder of this view on 3. You can get the same thing on 17, and that'll anchor you nicely in the round as well. We also come back to that little flash point on 8 as well, which again is something I quite enjoy. We've looked at minimizing holes down lighting, i.e. having bad lighting, and kind of the use of the move hole feature as well. And I hope that's been helpful. It certainly seems a few people didn't know about that one. In terms of the holes that I'd have to work really, really hard with, I think 7 will kind of be okay just by the fact that it's a shortish par 4. 13 I think is going to be tough. It's dead down lighting, it's uphill, there's a lot of that I find tricky. 14 I will basically use this kind of natural area and probably turn that into some sort of ravine barranca sort of thing, and have you playing over that and looking down on 18 potentially. What were the other holes that were down like in poor lighting? I don't love that one hasn't got the best lighting, but it had to happen so that the others are okay. I don't love that we've only got 3 par 3s, but is there any others that we could turn into a par 3? Might look at this point I might start looking and going, well, where are our par 3s in the round and what direction are they facing? So if we take our compass point, you can see this in the middle. Well, 2 is mainly playing south, and it is playing at 164 yards. 16, 222, and that's playing west, so completely different direction. And then this one's kind of similar direction, 200 yards. At this point, I kind of realised I really, really, really want a short par 3 somewhere. Is there anywhere we could shoehorn one in? I'm not sure whether there is. Because 164 is your shortest par 3, feels tough. And make 16 a short par 3 could work. I mean, 16 is one of those holes where it could be completely malleable. We could move it. Probably would move the hole anyway. Why don't we go? This one can be dead into the sun just for Mike. And we can go somewhere like that. Now, where could we put a short 3? I don't think we can because of how we've done the routing. Unless we make 5 short. We've already got one long par 3, so why don't we make 5 a shorter hole? That would seem to make sense to me. Give me the actual waypoint. There we go. Now, is that going to come into view on 4? Yeah, quite nicely. Actually, 166 is not too bad. Now we kind of know in our heads, well, this one's 164. We've got 164, 166. 166 is not a bad length for a par 3, so maybe this one just goes up a little bit longer into kind of medium range, like 180 odd. Maybe make it there. That's a 6 iron. We've then got 8 iron, and then a longer kind of 3 iron-ish hole. Okay. What else do we not have that I would have wanted? I would have wanted a really short par 4. So a kind of 300 yarder would be good. And I'd want a couple more that are really short actually. Now I think 8 is a good potential option for a short par 4. But actually no, you want a pitch shot into that green. Maybe we make 7 short. It's uphill though. And it's downlighting. Not a huge fan. Yeah, I will do. I mean, we could put 8, 7 right up to here. Maybe. Maybe the 7th tee comes in a little bit as well. 328 yards. 312. Potentially drivable. Don't really like this site for a drivable par 4 actually though. So maybe I think we'll undo that. And what do we feel about this one being a drivable par 4? Drivable par 4 overlooking all of those others? Yeah, I think this one could work a lot better. Now, do we have the green site right where we want it? Probably want it over there. We'll make that some sort of little ravine. Like drivable par 4 with kind of trouble short and left is my bread and butter. Now, to make it drivable, we probably want slightly over 300 yards. 305 sounds good. Green height's 9 feet down. Maybe go 315, 12 or so. Yeah, Wes, this has covered pretty much everything I do. Giving away all the trade secrets now. 9 then can be a long 4, and that works. If you go shortish 4, really short 4, long 4, I think that works quite nicely in 5. Now we're starting to get a bit of a swing of holes where you go, you know what, some of this is scoreable. Okay, so now I start looking at I might look at swings of 3 holes and think about what shot are you hitting in for your approaches. So this one, let's say we're hitting 300 off the tee. That's a good guide. Well, we're hitting an 8 iron in. A 6 iron in. Potentially 7 iron. That's okay. It's a mid 4 for me. We're then going to this tee and we're hitting probably a 7 iron again. Do we want same club there and there? Might be a question that so I might leave a marker there just to remind myself of that. Then got a par 5 where 300 is going to lead us right nicely on kind of 2-wood distance, 1 iron, depending on how you do it. And that's going to be looking over this lovely view. 4, well, this one we can make a kind of cape hole, and you can have potentially, if you hit down to here, you've got all of a 9 iron or an 8 iron in. If you bail out this way, well, you've got a 6 iron, so a little bit more, but maybe you have a better angle. Depends. We can play with that. Depends where we route that green, where we put that. We're then going to come into, well, an 8 iron off the tee. Is that going to be too similar to some of the other holes? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think, I mean, if you've just hit a long approach into these two, I don't mind you just having an 8 iron there. Then got a short 4 where we could maybe make you try to carry this direction or go over to here. 7 comes up here, and that's going to be a wedge in, which is good. We haven't really had a short hole that is pure wedge distance yet. This one will be good, because that one can be our kind of options hole of where can you go and give you multiple different choices, and the most dangerous of which is going for the green. 9 is then just plough your way uphill, hit about to here, and you still got quite a long approach in. I think that fits well with the flow of holes. 10, you can go crest. I mean, I could see this potentially being you hit up and over, so like maybe the high point of the land is up here, and you then get a dip into the green, something along those lines. It's not a long hole, you're probably hitting, what, 3 iron, 2 iron into it. 11, we'd made this potentially a drivable 4 as well, which I think is quite nice. I'd like having more than one drivable hole on this. And do they play different directions? Slightly. Yeah, I'm not so in love with the fact they're kind of similar directions, but we can deal with that. 12 we have, I think, is the last of our par 5s now. It feels like we've had quite a few par 5s in quick succession. What have we had? We've had 3. Maybe not. No, we've just had 3, 10, 12, I believe. And we got 30. Is that? I've only got 3 par 5s now. Now I've got 4. What's my final par 5? Oh, I made 18 a par 5, of course. 3 we can hit up to there, and that's potentially wedge or 9 iron. That's not too bad. Again, this one, wedge or 9 iron. Maybe those two are a bit too similar in terms of length. We'll tie those two together as something we need to look at. We then kind of hop out the other side of the clubhouse, and this is that loop that I quite like doing, of just rather than doing 9 out, 9 back, can we make it a little bit more creative? 15 was gap wedge or kind of lob wedge in, or sand wedge in. Then you've got a longer approach that fits quite nicely with the previous hole, and then you've got this one which is 300 and you're hitting wedge in again. Maybe now this one could be a little bit longer, but we can always take that tee back a little bit, that's fine. And finally then you've got 18, which is going to be uphill, and it's par 5, and it's pretty standard. Maybe I'd take that down to a long par 4. Might make life a little bit easier. So anyway, that's this, and that's kind of how we look at routing a course and all the sorts of things that go into coming along with these. The final thing that I haven't added that you might have noticed, and this would be a minor nitpick in contests, would be the coastline. Because of trying to use the lighting the way I have done, the coastline really just comes in on the left hand side. So left hand side of 4, left hand side of 5, left hand side of 6, left hand side of 12. It comes in dead behind 11. It comes in slightly to the right of 8. I mean, what I would be looking at with this course is basically trying to make it, as it kind of is already, so that you've almost got 2 tiers of holes. So you've got a tier of holes up here, and then they're all looking over the really coastal holes, and then there's maybe another tier up here. Kind of like the course that made me think of that originally would be Ramparts by Ryan McConnell. If you look at the Ramparts at Harp Head, you've kind of got this lovely little tiered selection of kind of little holes, which I think worked really nicely on that course. Could we work in a hole where it was going to the coastline the other way? Possibly. But I feel it would kind of compromise some of what we built up around here. We could have had 12 coming back the other way, but I mean, we could do that. Might be quite cool. that might be one thing I'd look at. So I'll put an X by that as maybe something I'd revisit again in another couple of days or what have you. Now at this point I'd maybe start looking at one of the holes to build out first. And I think the hole I would build out first would be 4, then 5, then 8. And the logic for that is, well, this is where your routing is the most cramped, and this is our main feature on the course. I know that I want that to be looking, and this green to be overlooking that. I also know that this hole, because I've got quite a vision for it in terms of having this little ravine sort of area here, maybe. I want to make sure that that works, and that you get this sightline over this hole and this hole. And until I know that, once I've got those ones done, I'd always suggest starting in one of these little tighter areas, because if you get that sorted, well then you can expand out. There are certain holes here, like 12 I know I can do whatever I want with because I've got space to burn either side. I know the same with 13, with 14, with 1 I can go as far out this way as I want. It's the ones where you're really cramped where I'd start. And particularly, also it's quite nice to start on a hole that you know will look good. So if we know 4 is going to look like our stunner, well, let's get started with that. Let's use our best idea on that hole. Let's make that be one that people remember. If you save that for the end, well, you may find that actually you've kind of, let's say you wanted a fairway bunker around about here, or I don't know, you wanted a kind of Cape style hole where you drive over to here, and you might find that actually you've used that idea somewhere else on the plot, and then your really good piece of land goes to an uninspired hole idea. Personally, I'd rather avoid that. I think that's going to be me wrapping it up, and hopefully that kind of gave you a bit of an idea of how I might go around routing a course. And I'm in a relatively tight area, but also some of the problems that you might face if you just do it in the kind of editor, as well as some of the things you can get away from. If you look at kind of, I think the main thing I would say to almost all people who are starting to design, try and keep these in as tight an area as you possibly can. So we've got 1100 to 1800, and we're going to have to plant that area, but we're going to have the whole meter just to plant that area. Whereas if we spread over the whole plot, we are pretty much doubling that, and all the space in between. Whereas actually when we're planting, say, 4, you're going to see 5 in the background, that's going to do that view for you, and you're going to see 8 in the background, that's going to do that view, and you're going to see 6. And when you get to 17, well, you don't have to plant anything because all of this has already been done. So yeah, I'm going to save this as kind of, what have we called it? Tutorial. I think we might go with this as our tutorial course. I don't like the Highlands one I was using. Now, if there's anything that you do want to see in the future, I will very happily do that. So I'll try to upload this to YouTube in the next couple of days. But yeah, take care all and good to see you.